All right, people. Today is January 4th, 2026. I'm Chris Lucas. This is my show, The Protestant View. Um, I got to go to work and we'll get ready for work in about 40 minutes. So this isn't going to be a very long show, but there were just some things that really bothered me about my debate I had the other day on Friday, January 2nd versus George Antonio's. Because when I'm rewatching that debate, and I noticed I had this problem even during the debate, but especially rewatching it. Um, to me, my opening's a little painful. Um, and I almost feel so embarrassed by it. It's like I definitely apologize to George Antonios and to the Gospel Truth channel. Like I really want to give Marlon $100 when I get a chance and be like, look, man, I'm sorry. Um, and there were some criticisms that George said to me during the debate, um, which they were fair criticisms. Um, Now he didn't criticize my opening, but part of the problem with my opening is I went into the details first, and I should have skipped the details. Went into a really quick interpretation of Daniel 9. Went through all the verses real quick, um, especially 24 through 27. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should have went. I guess if you can give like a 30-second explanation of the first 23 verses, maybe a minute or maybe 2 minutes at the longest, but then I should have maybe went over the other part for about 8 minutes and then went into the details for the last 10 minutes of it. And that was a mistake I think I made in my presentation, because that I went into the details first. And second of all, it wasn't like an intentional thing I did, but when I was looking at the time, I misremembered the time. And when that bell rang telling me I had 1 minute left, I thought I had 10 minutes left at that point. I still thought I had 10 minutes because I was looking at it and I was like, okay, I need to start getting to these other points. And I just felt like when I was thinking it back through, and just some questions George asked me, I was like, you know what? I made a mistake that I didn't run through my interpretation first. So I kind of want to show people what I mean by that, and I'm going to just kind of do the presentation how I think it should have been done. I'm not sure how many details I'm going to go into, but just so people get a rough understanding. So right now I'm 3 minutes into this video. It's about, probably about 3 minutes and 30 seconds when I finally start. So I'm going to see if I can do a decent presentation in about 5 minutes just to explain my view of Daniel 9, right? So, what I probably, oh gosh, I thought I had this organized a little bit differently, because I am kind of trying to make a new presentation. You know what? I think it would be best that I do start just with these final four verses of Daniel and then go into the first 23 afterwards. So it's about the 4 minute mark. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do a presentation right now. So when I read these 77s are decreed for your people and holy city to finish the transgression, to seal up sins, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophet, and to anoint the most holy. I see these 77s are 490 consecutive years, because it doesn't tell us in verse 24 that they are broken apart. So I'm not going to break these apart unless I find something later in the text. So first of all, I see 77s are decreed. And when you study these words, you can, that word is sevens is actually Shavua. So the Jews have a sabbatical cycle, and I'll go into this later if I get a chance. But they have these sabbatical cycles, which are 7-year sabbatical cycles. And that's what got them into this trouble in the first place, if we read the first few verses of this chapter. So this is a 490-year period decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, self sins, make atonement for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, and all that this stuff. All this looks to me like this could fit the new covenant, Jesus making a new covenant. It could fit everything Jesus did. But so now we're going to read on. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the word to restore and build Jerusalem until an anointed prince, there shall be there shall be 7 sevens, and after it has been rebuilt with street and mall, even in times of distress, there shall be 62 sevens. So when I read this, what I'm going to look for is a word or a decree to restore and build Jerusalem. And then I'm going to see when that is, and then I'm going to see when that lands, and I'm going to add these 490 years to it. Now, so far I've seen that, and when I'm reading this prophecy, they got a period of 49 years and a period of 434 years that are brought up. So if I go look up on the internet and ask it, hey, ask the AI, hey, what are these decrees that are that Daniel's prophecy could possibly match? And it say, hey, here's 4 possible decrees. So then I'm going to take and just start looking up the dates, the archaeology, and everything. And almost everybody will agree. Maybe they got about a year difference between these dates at the most. Like some people say 539 for Cyrus. Some people, I'm not sure if I've heard any variants on Darius. So almost everyone agrees with 520, it seems. Artaxerxes, sometimes I've seen that say 445. And Artaxerxes, and this is in his 20th year in 444 BC. And then Artaxerxes in his 7th year in 457 BC. And sometimes they'll say 458 on some charts. But so just know you just give and take a year. So basically what I'm going to start off first doing is just adding 483 years to it and 490 years to it and see where it lands. And so I'm going to probably skip out on even using Cyrus's decree because it looks like it fell short in 48 BC. Darius the First, that falls short in 30 BC. Artaxerxes' decree, that looks like maybe a possibility, but it looks like it's too far, like 40 AD to 47 AD. And then Artaxerxes in his 7th year, which we see it falling in 27 AD and 34 AD. So automatically I'm thinking, oh, well, Jesus got crucified right in between there. Even if I think it's, no matter what year you think, whether it's 30 AD, 31 AD, or the very popularized 33 AD. So then I'm just going to go back to the prophecy and keep reading it, right? So I'm like, okay, so like, if I'm someone new just walking up to this prophecy at first, this is all I'm going to do. I'm going to say, okay, I can see, it's kind of interesting that 483 years, which is all we got so far, is landing right at 27 AD, right around there. And so I'm reading verse 27. He shall cause a covenant to prevail for many. 1-7. Oh, so this is the final 7. Okay. And in the middle of the 7, he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. Oh, well, I know Jesus got crucified right in that 7-year period, and that did cause sacrifice and offering to cease. And upon the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the testing. Oh, you know what? I've skipped. I just saw I missed having verse 26 of my slides. So what I'm going to also read is after 62 sevens, the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing. So if I see that there's going to be an anointed one or Messiah, the prince, because a lot of versions say anointed one, says Messiah, the prince. And after 62 sevens, the Messiah or the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing. Well, okay, yeah, after 27 AD, Jesus was cut off in that. And it's obviously talking about the 70th week. because there's only 1 week left. So it says, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the coming prince shall destroy or corrupt, which also means ruin. Sahat is the word for destroy, which also means ruin and corruption, the city and the sanctuaries. And we know from studying Josephus, the Jewish people did do that. And its end shall come with a flood, and until the end there shall be war, desolations are decreed. So so when I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, so the only parts I might be a little confused about so far is I don't remember any kind of flood or war happening between that 7 year period. So as a new person, I'm just going to put that off to the side for a while. And I'm like, well, okay, verse 27 says, he shall cause a covenant to prevail for many, 1-7, and in the middle of the 7 he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. And upon the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until a complete end. That which is decreed is poured out upon the desolator. Okay, so basically, I'm coming to that understanding. I'm going to try to work with that because I can't find anything. You might go and start trying to work and see what through history could even match up to it with all those other decrees. But since I see something already that matches up to this is what I'm going to dig into more and see if I can make it match up, right? Because like I said, when someone first reads this might sound like you're seeing a war during that 7 year period, and you're going to see destruction because you're going to see the city and the sanctuary destroyed. And also it's like, well, what are all these abominations that happened during that 7 year period? But now that I have studied this more, I start to realize that no, the only thing, if you go back up here and think about this, did those goals get fulfilled during the 490 years? That's the question. So if you can figure out if those goals got filled, these are the only things that are promised to happen within those 70 years. Did I see those things happen with the sacrifice of Jesus in the beginning of the new covenant? Yes. Then when I go back and I read the earlier verses, I see that, that Daniel and his people are in Babylonian captivity. Why? Because they wouldn't let the land rest. And so now God is like, I'm going to destroy Jerusalem and send you all off to Babylon. And that way that land will have its rest. So Daniel knows, hey, that time that Jeremiah prophesied, that 70 years is up. And now, so he's praying and he's asking God because he hasn't really started to see anything yet. And so he's like admitting that his people has transgressed. And that's what led to that destruction of Jerusalem and that captivity. So when Daniel's praying, you think about this, all they know is that their temple has been destroyed, Jerusalem's been destroyed, they're still in exile, and they're in exile because of their transgressions. So when they're hearing this prophecy from Gabriel, it's like they're seeing that this looks like to me a new covenant, so they don't, to help them, because they could not handle their role in the old covenant. And I believe the Jewish nation had a mediator role between God and man, because that's what their priests basically acted as when they would have like people like Aaron go into the do the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement, right? Because there's all this language about how Aaron has the sins placed on him. Any high priest that does this has the sins of the people placed on him, and they have to be cleansed by it. And then he enters in to the Holy of Holies, right? Which is basically what we see Jesus doing with his own blood, to make atonement. And we know that Jesus had the sins of the people put on him, right? Just like the high priest did. So, but what we see is Israel had constant covenant failure, and this blood of the animals was not really good enough to take away all sins permanently. And also, we remember when Jeremiah says, I will put in them a new heart. I'll make a new covenant with them, and I will put in them a new heart, right? So all these things is to help fix the problem they have with transgressions under the first covenant. And when we see make atonement for iniquity, I don't know what else can make atonement for iniquity. What else can bring in everlasting righteousness, right? And who was the most holy? Now, some Bible versions say the most holy place, but all I see is the most holy. If there's an argument to be made that that's place, that's fine. We know Jesus did that. The book of Hebrews tells us Jesus either anointed the most holy, the Holy of Holies with his own blood, or you can say that he himself got anointed when um, some people argue when Mary Magdalene busted all that, put all that oil on his feet, that she anointed him with oil, and that he was anointed. I think Jesus said something about being anointed for his burial or something like that. There's also when you could maybe make an argument that when Pilate puts that sign saying "King of the Jews," well, that's basically calling him the king, or you can say once Jesus died and he offered and he went up to heaven, he anointed the most holy. If you want to say it's like someplace in heaven or something, but anyway, so all this just has to be fulfilled. So now when I read these other verses and it says, its end shall come with a flood until and until the end there shall be war. Well, okay, I'm just going to say this happens all afterwards, and we do see that happening afterwards, but we don't see that it has to happen within the 70 weeks. So I'm just going to say this is just going to be a result of all these things being fulfilled within the 70 weeks and the Jews themselves rejecting it. And he shall cause a covenant to prevail for 1/7, and in the middle of the 7 he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease, and upon the wing of abominations, or the extremity of abominations, shall come one who makes desolate until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out upon the desolator. So I'm just thinking all this happens after the 70th week. This is just something that happens after the 70th week. And all this verse 27 it's going into more detail about verse 26. And also remember, we don't have verse numbers here. So this could be a paragraph for all we know, right? That's just telling you more details about 26. And just reiterating, he, the anointed one. And so the coming prince, well, okay, the Jews have never seen a Messiah before. And now we see up here in verse 25, the anointed one, a prince. Oh, well, this is the guy that's taken 434 years, 483 years to come, 49 years to restore and build Jerusalem. Now it's taken him another 434 years, right? So 62 sevens altogether until the anointed one. So what it says here is after the 62 sevens, the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing. Well, it's telling us that this first 49, there's going to be a word that goes forth to restore and build Jerusalem. Anointed one a prince, and there should be 7 years. And after it has been rebuilt, so we see that it gets rebuilt in these 49 years. So if I see this period between 457 BC and 408 BC, and I see that all these construction projects are done. All of the Jews have been returned to Jerusalem, which we don't see prior to that. But when we read Ezra chapter 7, we see the entire decree that this prophecy begins on. It's saved in the first in Ezra chapter 7. They got the whole entire royal decree laid out. and we can see all those things that decree authorizes. It allows all the people to be paid for as they return back to Jerusalem to restore. We see all these restorations that Nehemiah, Malachi, and uh, Ezra all did during that 7-year period, restoring the law, reteaching the people about Torah, um, establishing a governance, right? So we see all of that being done. They're getting rid of pagan influences during that whole period. The whole city has been restored, not just physically, but also spiritually. We also see that the walls have been rebuilt during that time period. So um, then that's why I also don't use those other decrees, because we can see that Jerusalem was still lying in shambles, especially when you read Hezekiah, and not Hezekiah, Zechariah chapter 8, right? We can see that everything's still destroyed. We can also see in Ezra chapter 4, Darius had to give a decree to allow the rebuilding to continue. So it had stopped under Cyrus. So, and after the 62 sevens, an anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the coming prince. So they're waiting for this Messiah that's mentioned here to come after the 62 sevens. And so the people of the coming prince who corrupt the city and the sanctuary, well, that would be the Jews, right? And we only see one prince mentioned in this whole prophecy, and that's this anointed one, a prince. And this is a particular word in the Hebrew, negid. We do not see after the destruction of Babylon in 586 BC, all the way up until the destruction of the temple. Sorry about that. All the way up to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. I don't recall seeing the word negid used for anyone by the Jews. If they use a word, it's more like sar. So the Jews got two words for leaders, negid and sar. So we see sar used, but we don't see negid. Negid seems like its usage after 586 BC becomes very narrow. The people, this is a word called am, like am, when it gets translated from Hebrew to English, they do this transliteration. And so this, or right? So if I say or it's the people, but it's always a particular group. If you don't see like of Moab or something like that mentioned, the people of Moab mentioned, they never use the word if it's got to be a specific group, and the only specific group in this entire prophecy is the Jewish people. So this looks like, and the Jewish people are never they never belong to a secular leader. So you would never say that, they're the people of a secular ruler. And, especially when you see Nagid here, it's not going to be some other pagan's anointed ruler, right? Or divinely appointed ruler is normally what that word means. So, and see, now right here, my presentation would be just about over after 20 minutes. I'd still got about 15 seconds left, but I put that much forward. And then if they want to start challenging me, that's when I would start going into all the other details I went into with my presentation. And I can see that alone took almost 15, almost 20 minutes just to do it like that. But at least my opponent knows everything I see, everything I believe, and that would be fair. And yeah, and I was worried too much about making sure I did go into these details. But see, I wasn't thinking about how he's obviously going to challenge this in his rebuttal. And then I can get into the when I do my cross exam, then I can start pushing into these other details. Like, okay, I listened to your whole presentation too. You heard mine, I heard yours. These are the problems. This is why. And then I can start pointing out the details of this. Like, hey, look, this clearly says it has to be rebuilt after the 49 years. Things like that. Look, this word right here, this means corruption. And then when you start reading all this stuff from Josephus, which I'm not sure if I put this all. I know I got it somewhere back here. Yeah, so when you start reading this stuff from Josephus, it starts to become kind of obvious that when you read verse 26, it was then common to see cities filled with dead bodies, still lying unburied, and the whole province was full of the utmost disorder and wickedness. And thus did the miseries of Jerusalem grow worse and worse every day, and the seditious were still more irritated against each other. Now the warlike Jews were divided into three factions, and that which was within the city did more mischief than the Romans without it. Nor did the Romans do as much harm as they did to one another. The inner court of the temple was filled with blood, and that day, as it came on, saw 8,500 dead bodies there. The temple became a receptacle. That's kind of like a waste, a dumpster, a sewer, right? That's what that word receptacle is used for here. So the temple became the receptacle of all and was polluted by the hands of our own nation. Titus gave orders to quench the fire and thought it a matter of great consequence to preserve the temple, but the violence of the factions that were within the city was too strong for him. So see, it's their corruption that's actually causing the destruction, because you can see Titus right here, he's giving orders to quench the fires and thought it was a matter of great consequence to preserve the temple. So he was trying to preserve it, but the violence of the factions that were within the city was too strong for him. And so, and right here's a key point too. I suppose that had the Romans made any longer delay in the coming against these villains, the city would either have been swallowed up by the ground opening upon them, or been overflowed by water, or else been destroyed by such thunder as the country of Sodom perished by. So that's why I'm saying that it's probably better to translate this. I'm trying to get all the way back up here. I guess I gotta go all the way back. I'll just go back to the beginning because I know where that stuff is. So, in verse 26, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing. The people of the coming prince shall destroy Sahat, which I think should be corrupt. Yes, Sahat can be translated as destroy. And the people did actually destroy. If you read everything I just read to you, or if you listen to everything I just read to you, you see that they're really the ones who destroyed. So even if you want to translate that word to destroy, it's fine and still fits. But they did cause the ruin and corruption of the city and the sanctuary. And its end shall come with a flood, which I think just means suddenness, because the flood was sudden. That judged Noah. And until the end, there shall be war and desolations are decreed. Well, we also just read how there was warring factions within the Jews themselves, not just with Rome, but with even amongst the Jews themselves. And so desolations are decreed. And I just think that means, the that all the destruction of Jerusalem is decreed because of all of their doing, right? So then when we read this part after the 7 weeks, it's like upon the wing of abominations. I take the word wing to mean extreme of abominations shall come, which when we read Josephus, he says it was extremely wicked, right? So wing of abominations fits everything Josephus says. And if you want to read this as shall come one who makes desolate, you could read that as one just being something comes that destroys Jerusalem. Or you can read that this as the people themselves make it desolate. I got to kind of go back into the Hebrew and see if it should actually be shall come one who makes desolate until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the desolator. So since am thinking about that right now, I'm going to go ahead and just go into the Hebrew and look at it. But this is why I say I should have done my presentation like I did, and that way it would be fair for George, fair for the entire audience to see. It's not that I think I did bad in that debate. It's just that my opening was horrible because I need to make sure that everyone has the fullest understanding of everything, of the way I'm looking at this prophecy. So that's where my apologies go out to everybody, including the people I debated against and the host. That's why I feel like I need to give Marlon an apology and $100, man, because I don't want people to ever feel like I've wasted their time. You know what? Just real quick, while I go ahead, and I already have this pulled up on my screen. But see, also when I was doing this prophecy, I was also looking at these various years it could land in, making sure various parts of history match up. And so, I'm trying to find a day where the 14th of Passover will land. And you use the moon and the vernal equinox to figure that out. It's always going to be like a moon that starts after the vernal equinox because the equinox divides the years. All right. So if a moon starts prior to that equinox, that moon's still part of that previous year. So you have to wait until the moon after the equinox. It's just sort of like, think of sundown, right? We know a Jewish day goes from evening to evening. Well, that sundown is that dividing line. And we also know that in the morning, when we say when the sun starts to rise, that's also basically like another equinox of the day. Right. So, and the year has an equinox to it. It has one in the fall and it has one in the spring. And the Jews, when they do their religious calendar, because they start Nisan 1 right after this vernal equinox. And this is where it gets a little confusing because they have two calendars. One they use for civil reckoning, and you can read Nehemiah chapter 2 helps you figure that out. I don't want to go into that detail because it takes a lot of time. But basically, they got two calendars, but the one we need to figure out for Passover, you just look for the first moon that starts after the vernal equinox. Genesis 1:14 through 15 tells you that God gave you the lights in the sky for days, years, and seasons. So that's why we know you use vernal equinox, moon, and the sun to determine a day, right? And so when I look over here, I'm just looking for, possible days, and people will say, oh, well, wait a minute, 31 AD, that would be a Wednesday. Well, Jesus did say 3 days and 3 nights. So even if you believe a Friday crucifixion, maybe you need to be open-minded because Jesus did say 3 days and 3 nights. And this is one of the days one of the years he could have been crucified in. And then when I actually look into the calculations for 33 AD, I see that was supposed to be on a Saturday. Well, we know Jesus didn't get crucified on a Saturday. And people do kind of tamper with those calculations. And maybe, you can tamper with them enough and you can get Friday. And maybe you can argue for Friday for 33 AD. 30 AD is also a Friday. So you got 3 possible dates. And we see that 70th week happens between that. So, but anyway, I do want to look up the interlinear for Daniel 9:27. So Daniel 9:27 interlinear. Oh, and by the way, hey Daryl Cahoon, appreciate you stopping by. I didn't want to break up the flow of what I was saying earlier. So is what I'm looking for is that word shall. And on the wing of the abominations, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. Still, you know what? Let me ask AI. Now I'm real curious if that word is even in there. So I'm trying to bring up the right screen. So is the word shall in Daniel 9:27 in the original Hebrew? Oh, okay. So we see this word is not even in there. And no, the AI is not telling me just what I want to hear, and I'll do double checks, right? But I'm going to make sure that it knows. So just to be sure, in that part where some people translate it as shall be one who makes desolate is the word shall in the Hebrew. Just to be clear, I'm going to read what it just said. Oh, it still said no. Okay, so upon the wing of abominations, one making desolate. So I might have actually, I thought I've already fixed everything like that. So that there's a problem too. Upon the wing of abominations, one making desolate. So this is why I would go ahead and say it's the Jews, because it's upon they're doing it with their abominations. So to me, this sounds like because of their abominations, they are making desolate. It's because they are the ones making desolate. So it says key grammatical point is this. This is a call active participle. Root is shamim or semamim, which means to desolate or devastate. A participle functions like one who desolates, a desolator, one causing desolation. Participles do not carry tense. They describe character, role, ongoing activity, not time. So the Hebrew does not say shall be one who makes desolate, or it doesn't say will be a desolator. It simply describes someone as a desolator. So, and then it says where shall comes from and why it's misleading. English translations often insert shall because English prefers finite verbs. Translators assume future orientation. Prophecy is assumed to point forward, but grammatically, there is no future verb, there's no auxiliary, there's no time marker. Well, the text already tells us this is future anyway. That's why it's a prophecy. So you don't need to really add shall to it to make it even more future or something. It's like when you add that word shall, it almost sounds like there's going to be this entity that's going to come, right? So there's all these abominations, and then there's going to be this entity that comes that makes desolate. Whereas now, if I read that, I'm going to go ahead and fix that and add. I'm going to make sure we add this as the literal translation, because that really changes things. I'm gonna get rid of all this. There we go. So upon the wing of abominations, one making desolate, until the complete end, and that which is decreed, which is poured upon the desolator. So who's doing the desolate? Who's the desolator? Who's the one making desolate? Well, when I read Josephus, it's the people doing these extreme abominations. So they're the ones making desolate, and that which is decreed is poured out on the desolator. Who's the desolator? The one making the abominations there, because they're the ones making desolate. They're the making desolate, right? And then until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the desolator. So what was decreed? Desolations are decreed. These wars and desolations are decreed. So, and that's how its end is by the Roman army. Now, we're not told what its end is going to be, because you know what? For all we know, God could have struck them down with lightning at this time. We don't know when we're reading this prophecy. It's like we don't know. There's nothing that points like some kind of army. We just know there's going to be an end, and we're told why. What's happening. And so this might have even been kind of confusing to Daniel, because he's like, wait a minute. It sounds like we got to get our act together, and we got to stop our transgression, seal up sins. We got to make atonement. We need to bring in everlasting righteousness. We need to do something to seal up these visions. But then, you're told, well, this Messiah is coming. So maybe they're thinking, in the past that, oh, well, maybe this Messiah, this anointed one, this prince will be the one who does this. And you got to think, as all these years pass, because they haven't had a king or anyone, they haven't had anyone they would call a Nagid, an anointed leader, since 586 BC. So when it starts to get to be like 400 BC, this expectation is growing and growing. It's already growing just because of all their time in Babylon. They haven't even had anyone like that for 70 years when Daniel's given this prophecy. So you let another few generations go by, and it's like this starts to become a bigger and bigger deal, especially when you got all these foreigners ruling over them. Babylon, then the Medes and Persians, then Greece, and then Rome. So by the time we get to Rome, it's like, okay, we know this Messiah is supposed to show up anytime now. So that's why everyone was expecting it at that time. And it was a big deal, and that's why everyone was like, "Are you the Messiah?" They knew that Jesus, this is about the time he's supposed to show up, but they weren't liking everything they were hearing, because they were like, "When's this dude going to be like rallying us together, and having us go to war with Rome?" And it's like they're not seeing that from him. They're seeing this guy that's just like a rabbi, a preacher, a teacher, and that's not what they were expecting. They were expecting like some conqueror, and someone that's actually going to round everyone up and go to war. But they would also see that in this prophecy, oh, this anointed one's going to be cut off and have nothing. Now, a lot of translations say slain. Well, when you cut a covenant, you have to slay an animal. You see that like with Abraham, when God makes a covenant with him, he cuts animals apart and performs sacrifices. So it's kind of interesting that this anointed one shall be cut off, and it's the same kind of language, whether you want to say this is like slain or cut off, and he's going to have nothing or not for himself. So a lot of these versions say but not for himself, and the people of the coming prince shall destroy, right? So, and when he gets cut off, how's a covenant made? A covenant's made by being slain. So now, within this prophecy, I don't have to jump and say and make up all these stories about another temple, because we only see one temple. And before this prophecy is even given, there is no temple. At least to my knowledge. I mean, maybe someone's got, there's something I'm missing here. But I mean, to my best of my knowledge, there's no temple. It's not completed. So what we see here is no temple standing, and so we're told, and this no one's even in Jerusalem at this point, and this prophecy really doesn't even say nothing about a temple anyway. So it's like when they start saying, "Oh, there's going to be a third temple," well, we only see Jerusalem being restored one time, and I would think that part of that restoration would have to have something to do with the temple. Or, well, they would have to have a temple in there. Not that this prophecy is about the temple. Just that would be something that would be functioning when if Jerusalem's truly restored and built. So, another thing is, just these words I point out in the debate. 1:7. Well, we don't see this word for in here. Like, we don't see like covenant one and then 1:7 right next to the word covenant. And so in the debate, he was trying to argue that no, this is how we know that when that Antichrist, and what did he say? Said something. He says this has to do with the Abrahamic covenant, but I don't think the Antichrist can strengthen the Abraham covenant, because this word to prevail would be like to strengthen. If you look in the Hebrew, it's like to strengthen. So it's about an existing covenant. So at least he got that much, right. He said he thinks this is the Abrahamic covenant, though. But how would the Antichrist strengthen the Abrahamic covenant is what I'm curious about. Because that's what this wording would essentially mean. And he's doing it for people. And this was another argument. How's the Antichrist doing this Abrahamic covenant for people? It's almost like he's doing it for them. And he was like arguing that this word is supposed to be with. And when I started going through this, I did run that part through the AI. Again, pretty sure I have it up here somewhere. I thought I made slides for it. Oh, I guess I didn't make slides for it yet. So I thought I made slides to explain that even more. Oh, well, actually, I did. I misplaced them. Okay. So, oh no, this isn't it. I was thinking it's like in Isaiah. My point is made real clear though, because there's like some examples about the Hebrew wording, and it's like la rabim, and that's like for many. And when you see that, it's also in, gosh, I want to say Isaiah 53, if I'm not mistaken, where it's got that same for many. It's like la rabim. We also see that in somewhere else in the book of Daniel, I believe. It's like you see like that la rabim again. And it's always for many, for many. It's not with many. It's not like Jesus is going to do something. Because it's like, if you read that part in Isaiah, I want to say it's Isaiah 53. Let me go look. Probably help, because people are probably like, oh, I doubt what you're saying is right. So I think it's Isaiah. I really thought I already made slides for that. I can't even remember how to spell Isaiah. Because we're going to see this same exact phrase. And if you try to say, oh, no, it can be with, no, it can't be. Okay, yeah, right here, this is what I was thinking of. So the labor of his soul, he shall see, be satisfied by his knowledge, shall justify, righteous, my servant, for many. So we wouldn't say that he's going to do this with many, right? So now for whatever reason they didn't bother putting the word for here, but that is always like to or for. And even when we look up all the places where this word comes up at, so go down here, it should give me a list of places where it uses. So I'm particularly looking for these 4 occurrences because these are the exact ones. Okay, so all this should be for many. He will justify, and what he will do will be for many. I really have to kind of really go through those Hebrews because the way they translate it into English, it sounds kind of awkward if you say, because it's basically talking about how he's going to justify many, right? And I have to go through that the particular way they translated the English because now it's going to sound really awkward to put for, but it's that same word here. And if you try to do that with Isaiah 53 and you say with many, that means you do something with God for your salvation instead of saying he's doing it for you. Now he's doing it with you, so that means you got added works, right? So now you got to teach like like not just Christ alone, but you and Christ work out your salvation. Now, if you're going to be consistently translate it that way. But we see that phrase 4 times in the Old Testament, and all 4 times you would say, like even in Daniel 11:33, you could say two is because that word le, or it's like a lamed, right? So, but so right here we just see the la, so it's like for many, right? And right, oh, I think it's that character right there, if I'm not mistaken. And so that always means like towards, for the benefit, to, for, right? It's like it always means something like that. And I think it will even tell us that's what that word means. Well, no, I forgot that it's just going to tell us what the word many means. It's not going to tell us what the word la rabim means. But so that was like another problem. He really want to argue it's got to mean with, and there's a whole different word that means with, and I'll go over that in a future video. But that was like one of the issues that came up, was he was trying to argue, oh no, that means with, and it's like, no, you're not doing this covenant with people. So that was a big sticking point for me right here, because it's something that you do to people. And also, there's nothing that tells you how long this process is taking. Like, if anything, even if you're saying, oh nope, it's an antichrist is gonna cause a covenant to prevail, and let's say you really say that this is about confirming a covenant with people. Let me even just give you with for a second. Guess why we still got problems? Because it doesn't say that this word 1:7, it should still be up here. And it should still have a preposition. And even if you want to say, no, Chris, there actually is a preposition you're just supposed to put here, even though it's not in the Hebrew. And for, okay, even if you want to argue that just means it's going to take 7 years for him to sign this treaty. Doesn't mean the treaty is going to be for just 7 years. That treaty could be for 20 years. And also, it's a pre-existing, because it doesn't say this word cause. This is like it's not the word make. It's not the word create in the Hebrew. So this isn't a covenant that's created by the Antichrist. So that's another thing all these like so-called futurists, they have a problem with. or dispensationalists, because they keep wanting to say uh, cause, create, make. Well, they want to say make or create, but it's actually the word cause, but it's cause what? Prevail. He's going to cause a covenant to prevail, not make, though. And so, even if you want to argue, Chris, this 7 is pointing to this causing a covenant. Okay, even if you want to argue that, I'm arguing that it's just telling you about, oh, this is going to happen sometime during this 1-7. But if you want to argue that, no, Chris, I'm a King James onlyist. I'm going to put this word for here, and I'm going to insist for it is right here. I'm going to insist it, Chris, because King James is right. Okay, even if you want to say that, that just means that it's going to take them 4 years to confirm this covenant or to sign this peace treaty. It's going to take them 4 years. It's not telling you how long it's for, because in the Hebrew, these two words would have been right next to here, or it would have had different wording, like for like lasting 1-7 or something like that. Or if you just stuck this word right next to covenant, oh, covenant, this is a 7-year covenant. But no, this is after the word Manny. And I argue that this is just telling you this is the last week, because none of this final week hasn't been mentioned. So this word is inserted here just to tell you that all of this right here, from here to here, is all about the final week. It's just more details about the final week. Just like verse 26 was details about the final week and what happens afterwards. This is even more details. It's just reiterating everything in more detail. So even if you want to argue, no, Chris, 4 goes right here. Even if I grant you this is make, create a covenant, even if I was to grant you that, oh, okay, it's taking you 7 years to sign this, but don't say the covenant itself is 7 years. That's inaccurate for the language here. Oh man, dude, Mark, I'd like to do the show with you sometime, and because I've noticed things about this Hebrew grammar and what they do with it, and I want to just see what you think, since you know how to speak the Hebrew. Now, we still might disagree with some nuances about interpretation, but I think you would probably agree with me that that's the points I'm bringing up about the Hebrew are correct, because my friend Mark can read the Hebrew. I think he can even read the Paleo Hebrew a little bit. I'm not sure how much. I know he can, though. But he definitely can read the regular Hebrew. So, because he's Jewish himself. That's who Ohio Multicade is. If anyone wants to subscribe to his channel, that would be his channel name also. But anyway, like I said, this word right here, you know what? I could take his link. I'll find his channel. Do that real quick. I gotta go pretty soon. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna post my friend Mark, post his channel in the chat. Ohio Multicade. If anyone wants to check out some of the things he does. And I'll just put that in the chat. And then I gotta go. I gotta go to work. No, I don't have time to let anyone join. No, I didn't even have time to do this video. I got to get ready for work. So I think that's Josh. If that's you, Josh, I don't have time, man. But I'd be willing to have you on sometime, man. But I got to go. So